Hey, we're Saints. Happy Monday. Father Chris here. Welcome to our Crucifixional live stream. Glad to have you beautiful people with us. We are entering now, I don't know even know what it is, the second, third, fourth week of the Russian invasion of Ukraine and all of the assault by President Putin and his armies against the people of Ukraine and so on. And everybody's outraged about it. And it's, the topic du jour. And I mean, it's like, it's all that we think or talk about. I mean, it covers everything. And I was thinking about it. Now, I'm going to say some rough things today, so some people may be irritable with me, but I ask you to listen to what I say. Think about the words I'm about to say. You may not agree with me, and that's totally fine, but think about it. In the last couple of years, it's been very tumultuous. The election and presidency of President Trump, was enough to cause jubilation for some and outrage for others. Then there was the COVID virus, which has been nonstop outrage for some people and really for all of us. We dealt with things like the killing of George Floyd and the police officer Derek Chauvin, and everybody was outraged about this. And like I said, the COVID virus, with the masks and the not masks and the outrage that went there, and the vaccinations and the not vaccinations and the outrage that went there. And now we're dealing with Ukraine and the outrage that goes there. And of course, in the current, context of the United States, I mean, the gas prices and the outrage, probably rightfully so for many of you gas users, that goes along with that. And it's like we're always outraging about one thing over after another. And it's become a trendy thing to say, I support this cause, or I support, the Black Lives Matter and the outrage that went with that, or I support this and all of the outrage that goes with that. And you can see, like, we've kind of been pulled along by a string, from one outrageous event to another. And it's funny, Elon Musk, who I know you all know who he is. He's the founder and CEO of Tesla, along with other companies that he's had and built over his lifetime. He, on his Twitter feed last week, said the following: I support the current cause, right? Or the current, what does it say exactly?
Current thing.
I support the current thing. And it's kind of funny because he's really exposing something that I think all of us, need to be mindful of. Oh, I left it out. Like in the last couple of years during President Trump's tenure, we had 2 Supreme Court justices that were put in, right? And there was all kinds of outrage with that kind of stuff. I say that because over the last 2 years,
and the election
contesting the elections, outrage all over the place. But in the process of it, you can see what's happened. We have become experts on civil rights, experts on epidemiology involving the virus. Everyone has become an expert on Supreme Court or Supreme Court
constitutional law.
I mean, come on, man. Now everybody's an expert on, European relations and no-fly zones. Like, it cracks me up because we become, like, we get sucked around by all of these things. We support this, we support that, we're enraged about this, outraged about that, we're experts in this, we're experts in that. And all the while, what we failed to see is there's a common thread here. And that is that we're outraged by every single thing that comes across. Now, you might ask yourself, why outrage? Well, I think it's pretty simple. It's because outrage gets clicks, right? Joy and peace and happiness don't get clicks, and advertisers like clicks, right? So, like, you can see that this string pulling, these spirits that are leading us down the path are leading us into an ever more and ever growing world of anger and outrage and divisiveness and all the things that we as warrior saints preach against all the time. Now, this is nothing new because throughout the history of the world, look, it's not even that old, right? Think about this. Remember, barely 20 years ago, on September 11th, some people flew planes into buildings and killed a whole bunch of people. And we were outraged, right? And rightfully so. We as a nation and as a world were outraged. Started a war because of it. Monuments, all, in New York City and in Pennsylvania where the plane went down, all that, like, we were outraged and rightfully so. But how much do you care about it now? Like, to be honest with it. I mean, you say, Father Chris, of course we care about it. Really? Do you talk about it? Is it in the headlines? Is it in your Facebook feeds? Right? Like, it's not. Because they've taken us from that outrage to a bunch of others. Now, I will say this. All of the things that we've talked about are important. I am not even suggesting that they are unimportant. What I am suggesting is that you and I, as warrior saints, come on, bro, we got to be ferocious. We have to be lions. And to be lions means we have to think. And you cannot just take what is spoon-fed to you by your social media feeds and your news media feeds and all of the rest of the things that are spoon-feeding you and just go along blindlessly, mindlessly, without thinking and just consume all of the outrage, right? This is dangerous. Now, the author of 1 John, I'm going to read to you some verses. He's talking about something similar, specifically to, let me ask you this before I go into 1 John, right? If we're so outraged about injustices in the world, how come we don't hear anything about Palestine? Why not? Like, we don't talk about it very often, right? And the Palestinian people have been oppressed for decades, suffering greatly, right? We don't talk about that stuff. It may not, I should be careful, but it may not suit those in the nine who want to pull those strings. They want that kind of stuff kept quiet, right? Like, we don't hear about those, and there are a gazillion others. It's not just the Palestinian people. Like, there are gazillions of other things happening in the world that we don't talk about. But we only see the ones that will pull our strings, that it's easy and comfortable to support, right? The spirits are leading us down a dangerous path. And we cannot be, as warrior saints, mindless and not think about them and just consume what they are spoon feeding us. As I said earlier, you got to think and you got to test it to see if it's legit, right? Now I'll bring us back to 1 John chapter 4. Listen to these words. Now he's talking specifically about a proclamation of the gospel within the Christian context and the Christian message. But listen to what he says. Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are of God. For many false prophets have gone out into the world. Right? Test it, bro. If someone's talking, test it. Because there's a lot of false out there. Right? And he goes further. He wraps it up here. Listen to these, verse 2 and 3. By this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit which confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is of God. And every spirit that does not confess Jesus is not of God. Right? Like, there's the real meaning in all of it. Is Christ in the picture? And look, all of those things that we talked about, whether it be, President Trump, coronavirus, vaccinations, masks, Black Lives Matter, blah, 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 all the rest of it. At what point do we ever talk about Jesus Christ in that? I mean, obviously we don't. But here's what's worse. Why are we so outraged about all of those things and we are not outraged at the defense of the gospel of Jesus Christ? That's the real question you got to ask yourself. Like, if I'm so easily led astray, why am I not also, especially for those of us who profess to be Christians, as outraged against assaults against the Christian faith, right? Like, they don't want you to be outraged against that because that's truth. Because the gospel of Jesus Christ and confessing him as Lord is truth, right? And so they don't want us anywhere near that. They'd rather us distracted and lost in all of these other things. And again, like I say, the Ukraine obviously is important and what's happening is important. I'm not trying to diminish it. I'm just saying you and I have to think that, are we thinking about it, testing it, or are we just led there because the news media spoonfest? That's the question I wanted to go after today. Probably a little disparate, but it's important, and I see it as being something essential for us as warrior saints. Because look, we are called to live in the world, right? We live in the world. And at the same time, to not be of the world. We don't want to be worldly, right? And by that, I mean we don't want to think in the way the world thinks. We also have a responsibility to help change the world. Right? We are called to bring this Christian life, the life of the cross, crucifixional living in our own lives and in the world at large. And to do that, you've got to use the noggin. So I say these things to you. When you read anything that's coming to you, especially digitally, really think about it. And really think, is this the full story? Most importantly, is Jesus in the conversation, right? And if Jesus is not in the conversation, is it a conversation that's worth your precious time? I would say to you, no. I would say that absolutely not. That all of the conversations somehow, some way must be, not that we just sit around and talk about Jesus himself, but in the modus operandi of Christ, the cross. My point is this. Test the spirits, as John says to us, to see, are they confessing Christ as Lord, or are they confessing something other? If so, perhaps it's not of the gospel. All right, tough stuff. I know I was disparate, I was all over the place today, but think about these things. And you know what? We'll probably come back tomorrow and revisit. Who knows? We'll see where the Spirit takes us. That being said, as always, just visit warriorsaints.org. We want you to join us. We love you, beautiful people. We will be back tomorrow on Tuesday to keep going. As always, keep walking on the way of the Warrior Saint.